Hi, and welcome to Random Rogers Big Picture for the week of February 24th. Two things on the agendas this week, a couple of new ETFs, and also kind of a funky segment on CNBC. So, new ETFs, a company that I believe is called Revenue Shares, came out with three new products, a broad-based large cap, mid cap, and small cap ETF. They're fundamentally weighted by revenue. It takes all of the components in the three big S&P indices and weights them by revenue. So all the components are there, weighted by revenue. There's an article on Index Universe which goes into specific detail about the back test, and the funds did pretty well. There was also a segment on CNBC where the guy quoted in the Index Universe article was on with some financial advisor guy who does a lot of the or does a few of the ETF trackers. He's kind of in the regular rotation, and I want to talk a little bit about that segment. The guy totally whiffed on what to ask the ETF creator about. Let's kind of go into that real quick. This guy, and I don't remember his name, sorry about that, he was concerned about a few things. He was concerned that, first, the expense, 49 basis points. Sounds expensive. If you look at the Index Universe piece, you will see that net of fees, the revenue products beat the market cap weighted products by something close to 250 basis points per year, net of fees. So, if it, and there's no way to know this going forward, obviously, but if it can keep that up, then it's clearly, unambiguously worth the extra roughly 40 basis points of expense, if it can keep it up. That was one thing, and if the guy had done the homework, he would have had time for a better question. He was also concerned that weighting by revenue was not good, because back in the dot-com bubble days, you had companies with revenue but no earnings, and he cared more about earnings. Well, that sounded, as he was saying, that made no sense to me, because the big problem was companies with no earnings or revenue that had $100 billion market caps, but maybe I have that wrong. But the guy came back and said, well, in 2000, revenue weighting was up 5%, while the S&P 500 was down 9%. Those were his numbers. I didn't vouch for him. So our revenue products beat by 1,400 basis points. Again, 2000, that's right in the middle, right? So again, this guy asking the questions, the financial advisor guy, didn't do his homework, wasted time asking a dumb question. He was also concerned with that they're going to disappear, not draw assets. Claymore just closed 11 funds. Okay. It's a new company to the space. They've got three products. It's a business plan. They've got something here. I don't know how great the something is, but they're not going to disappear in 3 months. It seems a bit premature to use that as a reason not to buy on day one that the funds list. The thing that I think would have been much smarter to do, much more intelligent, much more value for anyone who's interested in buying broad-based products, is how does your fundamentally weighted thing compare to other fundamental methodologies? WisdomTree has two of them. You know what they are, the dividend weighting and the earnings weighting. PowerShares uses Rob Arnott's the RAFI process, which looks at four different things, earnings, sales, revenue, something else. Sales and revenue are the same thing. But looks at four different things and weights based on the scoring of those four. This revenue-weighted thing, it either is better or it's not. Looking back over time, it either stands up or it doesn't. But that's what's more important. People who, there are people who, for whatever reason, aren't going to ever go away from using market cap product things. So this extra 200 or 250 basis points is not going to entice them. The people that, for whatever reason, are inclined to use broad-based, fundamentally weighted things in an effort to add out performance or better returns versus market cap weighting, that's what they should care about. Are these revenue things better than other fundamentally weighted products? It's either yes or no, and that's the time that should be spent. This seems intuitively obvious. The thing that this shows is you've got guys in the business who don't know what questions to ask. And that, I think, is a problem in terms of, when you hire an advisor, if you're ever going to do that, and I suppose most of you are not, but that's something to be cognizant of. The other thing is, as you do your own learning on these things, you're going to read content from either journalists or other people who do what I do, who just flat out don't get it. They miss the mark for whatever reason. What are you going to do? That's that. The other thing I want to talk about was a mail-in segment, or email segment, also on CNBC, where some guy spelled out being short 30%, cash 25%. I believe I've got these numbers right. The other 45% was some combination, undefined, of silver, oil drillers, and infrastructure. It's allocated toward a pretty narrow outcome. It's a pretty aggressive way to go. And so I guess I'm just pointing out that it's interesting to hear what other people are doing. It's probably worked very well for the guy. But, understand it for the, plug it into, whatever software thing you have, that portfolio science I talk about. That might be interesting. Take a look at the risk you're taking, how it deviates from the market. Interesting stuff, great to learn about. The Stuart Freeman, I think, from A.G. Edwards was on there, and one other guy, and they didn't really know what to do with, say to this guy other than, oh, that's a pretty big bet, and they're right. It's an impossible situation to really give a good critique. No one, who goes on there as some sort of financial advisor, something or other, is going to give their blessing to something like that. It's an extreme bet on a narrow outcome, and it either works or it doesn't. But someone who hops around from extreme bet to extreme bet may do very well for a while, but there's a high chance at some point they end up in a lot of tears, or maybe they turn 40 and have an epiphany about their money. Who knows? Anyway, that's about it. Have a good weekend.